the photo out.
So for people, I heard somebody say the what? The Magic Cellar was a nightclub in San Francisco in the basement of a famous jazz nightclub called Earthquake Magoons. Earthquake Magoons was owned and run by a man named Pete Clute, whose brother was into stage magic and who took over the basement of the nightclub and had a magic club there. And for 6, 7, 8 years, some number of years, we lived there every Friday and Saturday night. You never had to think about what you might do on a weekend night. It was more like, who else might be at the cellar?
And some Thursdays and Sundays.
Yes.
It was open those nights too.
Tom worked there some of the time. Many of us did odd jobs there. Terry Gary was what she called the door dragon. Cedric's wife, Jan, was cocktail waitress. It was an extremely familial, comfortable, easygoing spot. And I think a good way to start would be to ask everybody on this panel who was a regular for one fun Magic Cellar memory. And whoever goes first is probably going to grab a really good one. So who wants to go first?
Well, I'll go first because the obvious.
Take the mic. Take the mic.
Take a mic.
The obvious one was it wasn't all magic. There was also juggling. Yes. Specifically, the Flying Karamazov brothers, and they would juggle on stage. They're absolutely amazing and funny, and they juggled. I can't remember. Did they have chainsaws back then?
No,
I
they didn't have chainsaws.
Ever made it to the Magic Cellar.
Yeah, but they had other sharp, dangerous objects, and some other objects that weren't sharp but were dangerous, like flaming torches. And what I specifically remember was once when they were doing the torches and they fumbled and it fell into someone's lap while right at their feet, which they quickly grabbed and no harm was done. But that was pretty funny, and that engendered the saying, sometimes the front row seats aren't the best seats.
The specific person whose lap it fell in was in fact a fan.
Yep.
Known to many of us here, Matthew Tepper.
That's what I was thinking.
Which apparently made people laugh just as they did now.
The quote was, sometimes your front row seats aren't always your best seats, and they used it from then on.
Yep.
Mike, you have a story?
Not that I can tell in public.
See, Mike, this is core flute.
And it's being recorded.
Yes.
I'm
So
curious.
the bartender introduced me to a woman with whom I spent the next several years of my life. That was, fortunately for me, I got better.
Stories. Well, I mean, that was up at the, which hotel was it in
Volcano.
in Volcano?
St.
Which
George.
hotel?
St.
St.
George.
George in Volcano. And some of us spent some time there too. I've got a couple.
What's the St. George and Volcano? What relationship does this have to the Magic Cellar?
Thank you. Oh.
I know, but
I would not there, but thank you, Karen.
Anyway, well, after what Mike said, because I remember that night at the St. George, when Mike and
When Mike was introduced to somebody, he got better after.
yes. Anyway,
I rode up in Doug's car.
anyway, yeah, I did a lot of driving up the Volcano because of the Magic Cellar connection. They had a film festival. Pete had a film festival up there, and a lot of us went up there, and we had, oh God, I'm just remembering stuff. We had moose milk, which is not the same as the Canadian moose milk, but it was different. And I had moose boots. Oh, it's just all coming back.
We have pictures too.
Can I say
Yes.
something? I've got a bunch of pictures on. I've got a bunch of photos on my laptop from that era, which is the mid to late 70s, and I can put them up after we're done here or after somewhere. I can put them up somewhere on Cycle Through, and you can see. You'll just have to guess what they are, though.
I also,
But we're gonna go past Doug, whose story
Wait a
is
minute.
coming back.
I
Yeah,
got one more. I got
okay.
one more story,
Okay.
which is kind of
One more.
interesting about the people who spent time there. There was a guy named Bart Hoyley who was nominally a retired spook, and he hung out in the bar and he wrote mystery stories. And I was doing some work with image processing systems, satellite imagery. And so I ended up in Washington, D.C. in a famous building. The human resources desk was downstairs, so everybody knew who it was. But we had an image processing system upstairs. I had a clearance. I had a big clearance. And I had to be escorted. So when we did things, we all had to go to the bathroom together, for example. But at one point, we started to go to lunch, and I got on the elevator, and there was Bart Whaley. And neither one of us, we looked at each other and looked away, and neither one of us said anything. Because he was by himself. I had to be escorted, although I had clearances. He was by himself going to lunch. So that was sort of the most interesting little bit that happened to me out of that, because in that whole thing, a lot of stuff happened there connected to all of that I did at various times. I've got one with a Terry Gary story too, and we'll pass on that one for later.
Get there. Tom.
This is one that happened to Deb and me. There were a lot of the magicians we got to be friendly with. And one of them was
Martin Lewis.
Martin Lewis, yes. And Martin had a very slick professional show. And one evening he cut it short. And we were wondering what was going on. And we found him backstage, lying on his back. His hernia had strangulated.
oh my God.
While he was on stage, and he was in severe pain. So we got our car and drove him over to the East Bay, where his doctor, his personal care physician, who was another magician, named Nick Lewin, who happened to be a brain surgeon. He had a card which said,
Card tricks and brain surgery, if I remember correctly.
selected card tricks and brain surgery. And by the time we got to the hospital, his hernia had dropped back in while he pressed on it. And the emergency room people could not figure out why a brain surgeon was being called in. But we actually cleared everything up, and we went off to an IHOP Denny's, because it was very late at night, and we're there, and what was his name?
You just said Nick Lewin, I don't remember.
No, the surgeon. Yeah, it wasn't
Nick.
Nick. Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't have remembered it.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, and he's saying, Martin, you've got to know how much I care about you. I was out on a date tonight, and working with a girl. I fed her oysters, Martin. I fed her oysters, and we were just going into the clinch, and my beeper went off, and she looked at me and said, "Are you wired for sound?"
I had not thought about that one in a long time. But that leaves, I was sure we would not get to me with this story. But one day, somebody brought in 5 or 6 cards of 8 or 10 or 15 each fake mustaches. Everyone put on a fake mustache. And you would be amazed at the amount of personality transference. Everybody was different. Everybody was more relaxed. And when I say everybody, I mean all the women, all the men who had beards put mustaches on over their mustaches. And we had the best time. I think it's hard to convey how much it was a professional, money-making business, but it was also like a giant party of people who knew each other.
One of the people who put on one of those fake mustaches was Bob Silverberg. And the comment was how much nicer he got when he put a false mustache.
And of course,
Please.
speaking of writers, Quinn Yarbro read Thoreau there
Yes, she
as
did.
as a regular.
I think she's who brought us all in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should start by explaining why this happened. So Cedric Clute and Pete Clute were brothers, and they owned the club together, basically. Well, Pete owned it with Turk Murphy, who was the horn player and the spirit for the Turk Murphy Jazz Band, which is why they had built this club in the 50s in San Francisco. Anyway, Cedric Clute was a fan. He had stuff that appeared in fanzines. He had a collection of science fiction magazines, fantasy books. He also collected mysteries. And so he tended to gather writers for the club. When they opened up the basement into the Magic Cellar, a lot of writers began to gather because it was the right kind of environment. And so where the writers went, suddenly there were fans as well. So I asked him at one point, how did Quinn Yarbro wind up reading tarot cards at the Magic Cellar, which he did every weekend for years? And Sid told me that he went to a conference, a science fiction conference at Stanford, and there Tom Scorsia, whom he knew, introduced him to Quinn Yarbro. And somehow they came out to discussion, and Quinn probably said, well, I know how to read tarot cards. I'm just guessing because I didn't know this at all. But in fact, she wound up there and she was a record, had a great big sign that said tarot for Quinn. And it was there every night. And she eventually talked several of us into going there. And once we went there, we never stopped going.
She was reading in a cabinet, which was a spirit cabinet that was part of Carter the Great's effects. The whole story of how the Carter the Great effects got into the Magic Cellar is a whole other.
Well, I think it's where we're going to go next, because I think one thing is to give the feeling of what it was like to be there physically.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so somebody want to talk about who Carter the Great was? I'm thinking Allen.
Yeah. Well, I don't know everything about them. Many of you may have read, there was a recent bestseller about Carter the Great. Whose title?
Carter Meets the Devil.
Carter, that's right.
Gould, if I recall.
Yeah.
And Bob Herrick was the name of the magician who was reading Martin.
Right.
And where was I going with this? So Carter was a contemporary of Houdini's, among others. And there are some biographies of him floating around. He wasn't necessarily the nicest guy in the world. He was accused of stealing effects from other magicians, for example. But as you can see, his his artwork was fantastic. Yes, great. And this is just a smattering. There are many more posters, and you could find them in books on magic posters. But what happened generations later is that Pete and Ced Clute had an MG or a Triumph or something that they were intending to restore in a storage locker somewhere in San Francisco. And then the people that ran the storage locker said they were going to shut it down. They had to move it. But they went in there, and there's this MG on blocks, and they, between the two of them, I think, tried to move it. And it slipped off the blocks into the wall, and the wall collapsed or put a hole in it. It was just bricks. It wasn't structural. And on the other side of the wall, there were these enormous crates that had Carter stenciled on them. When I say enormous, they're crates that are bigger than these tables and about as thick. They were really big. And of course, Cedric said, "Oh, I wonder if that's Carter the Great. Like, how many of you would do that?" Right? But he knew about Carter the Great. He followed up with the people that owned the storage locker and found out who owned it and talked to her, and she said, "Oh yeah, I got this from my parents. Who got it from their parents. You know, she was Carter's, you know, like great grandniece or something like that, and she wanted nothing to do with these things. So they offered to buy them, and she said, great. And they acquired all this stuff, and they opened it up, and it was, you know, I wouldn't say Pandora's box, that gives the wrong impression. It was full of magic paraphernalia. They had the dunk tank, the Iron Maiden, the Saw the Lady in Half.
They had the aviator jacket that Harry Houdini was given by the Australian government for doing the first powered flight in Australia, because Houdini had been a friend of Carter's. And that was on display at the Magic Cellar later on.
Along with a lot of other stuff. It was if you like both paraphernalia and ephemera, it was really magical.
We're talking big stuff here, the
Yeah.
size of
Use
closets.
the microphone.
Big stuff,
Yeah.
the size of closets.
The cabinet that Quinn read tarot cards in was from that.
Yeah. And one of those cabinets, actually one of those crates, actually had stacks of posters like this. Stacks of them. Try to buy them now. I got one that's twice that size, I think. When I got it 40-something years ago, it was $500.
It's now in the thousands.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. And I have to figure out how to display it someday.
You need another house, Ellen.
New house.
No, I actually, when we had this, we had a fire, we had to rebuild the house, and I rebuilt it with the hallway being 9 feet high, so I could hang something. But try to find a piece of plexiglass that's that size. You can somehow, and then how do you get a 9-foot sheet of plexiglass into your house through the doorways? Think about it.
So somebody, maybe you, about just what it was like to walk in to the Magic Cellar and to be surrounded by all that stuff.
It felt like I had a family even more than before. I mean, I had moved to the Bay Area in '75 and discovered Pensacola. And I think Mike took me to the Magic Cellar. We went to Littleman's and we went to the Magic Cellar. And all of a sudden, there was this whole group of people who were amazing. And, you know, and I just have so many memories of that place. People who are gone now. Frank Robinson was a regular there. So, I mean, among others. So we just had a good time. I don't think anybody threw any parties at that point, because if we wanted a party, we just went to the cellar.
Do you remember?
The doorway was very unassuming.
Yes.
Earthquake Lagoons had a huge marquee. They had lots of stuff going on. And to the right of it, if you're looking north, there was a little tiny doorway which said the Magic Cellar was red. This was a block away from the Transamerica Pyramid.
Which most people call the Transamerica Pyramid,
Yeah.
but this is top.
Didn't
Yeah.
exist at that point.
Yes,
It existed fairly soon after they opened.
Okay.
They built it. And in fact, one of the things the Karamazovs did was they practiced a fair amount. And one night they took Deb and me out and let us watch them perform jazz for the very first time before anybody else, in front of other people, underneath the Transamerica Pyramid. And we got to sit there and watch them experiment with the whole idea of doing this. It was pretty wonderful.
Well, their whole idea of jazz was the four of them throwing clubs and none of them knowing what the other ones were throwing. That
Or how they were throwing.
improv juggling, bravura improv juggling.
Yeah. And through that unassuming door, there was a steep staircase that went down to the a little table, which was a magic table, which had all sorts of things on it, behind which sat Terry, or occasionally me, or eventually other people, who would let you come in for $2. That was the entrance fee. You could check your code or half for a quarter. And then there were the crates, which had been behind the wall for people to sit on. You go through and there were crates, there was a bar to the left, the stage in front of the crates, which were arranged sort of for seating, and a couple of tables that people could have drinks at. The specialty drinks were a levitation,
That's the one I was trying to remember.
yes, which was rum, brandy, peach brandy, and sour mix. Blended. It was very tasty, very light, and very strong.
Love it, skating.
Yes.
Mhm.
Actually
Mike
answering
is
the
calling
question I
something
was
up.
going to ask.
Yes.
Everybody fixing Cedric's mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Coke
yes.
and scotch.
Cedric
Scotch
was,
is Coke.
Cedric was many, many, many fine things, but he was not a professional bartender. And he was the bartender.
For it.
You can't read this, you can come and look at it
He
later.
was not
What
a
is it?
trained.
It's the list of
Bartender.
drinks.
The list of drinks.
I can recognize it from here.
So he made a lot of mistakes. And those of us who were there without paying our $2 because we were family got to drink a lot of the mistakes.
Or
Try.
taste. Make mistakes. And not drink them.
All right, hold up the list again.
I drank Irish coffees a lot.
The camera.
Oh, it's gonna be reversed.
So
Oh, turn it around.
Yeah, hold it inside or reversed. Never mind.
All right, never mind.
So I see Karen, I was going to say, Rick found Quinn, and she ended up bringing Tom in. The way the Karamazov brothers, who were not magicians, wound up at the Magic Cellar was that one of them sat next to Cedric on a flight. And they, what do you do? Oh, I'm a juggler. What do you do? Oh, I have a nightclub.
You do know there's more to that story.
No, I don't. That's all I know.
They weren't supposed to be on the same flight together. On the way to the airport, Cedric, somebody's asked Cedric for the time. He says, "Oh, it's so and so o'clock," and he walks into the gate area, and he gets pulled away by security, who starts grilling him. And and he couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. They kept him there for hours, and they finally said, "Okay, the reason is the guy that asked you for the time, we're following him. He's a spy. And the fact that you talked to him made me think that you were communicating with him. And, okay, we'll put you on the next flight." And that's how he ended up on the flight with the Karamazovs, who had just come off of a stint at the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh.
And we haven't mentioned yet probably the most famous person who was a magician at the Magic Cellar, which was Harry Anderson, who went on to become the judge on the TV show Night Court.
He was one of the regulars.
Yeah, he was a regular performer.
Yeah.
And then Harry Lovecraft was not particularly wonderful. It was amusing.
We need to talk about the magicians.
Cards.
We do need to talk about the magicians, and I'm going to throw out a name.
It's an amazing list.
So somebody say something about Arthur Murata.
Oh,
Yes.
What's up back here?
Close up magic.
Arthur was one of the best close-up magicians I've ever seen. I did manage to see some of his tricks work twice, but this was watching every night for years. He was small, round, and irrepressibly jovial. Very, very friendly. And he could do things with a card or a lemon to shove under a cup or any of a number of things that just were, even if you knew how he was doing it and watched to be able to see it, the skill with which he did it was so impressive that it didn't matter that you knew what he was doing. What mattered was that he was just perfect in his presentation.
And it got him in trouble.
Stage job.
Yeah.
It got him in trouble because he was a bank teller. And somebody who had seen him do his close up went into the bank and said, we don't trust anything this guy does because he's such a good close-up magician. He could be doing anything with our cash. It was the Wells Fargo up near my house.
He was also black belt judo, I believe, or jiu-jitsu.
I don't remember which, but yes.
I think judo. If anybody has, I'm getting to you, Karen, you're next. If anybody has Elizabeth Lynn's short story collection, I will think it's called The Woman Who Loves the Moon.
Yeah.
It's got a short story in it called Don't Look at Me, which is really about Arthur doing close-up magic, and it's a marvelous story. I wouldn't happen to be like have an opinion about Lizzie's work or anything.
Lizzie was a regular there and was also one of the great.
Oh, the famous writers list goes on.
Yeah.
But let's take some questions. Karen's been so
I was going to say one more thing regarding Arthur, Wendy Rose.
Yes.
Wendy Rose was a fan. She was an artist. She was Amerindian, traditional, and had all sorts of interesting things about her. And somehow she and Arthur clicked. Did they get married anyway?
They lived together for a very long time.
They moved out into the valley. Things aren't so good now.
No.
That's what we heard.
Karen.
I was gonna ask about Arthur and Wendy. And
Wendy also
Thank you.
Wendy used to sit at the Magic Cellar and draw.
Mhm.
And it's what made, this is totally tangential, but it's what made me realize that for me, where do you get your ideas is not an interesting question. But watching a visual artist, I think, how do you know where to put the next line? In exactly that way. I see David and then I see Rich.
I'd ask you to describe what it was physically like to watch Arthur doing close-up magic or others like that, because you had to be close. You know, he would sit at this table at the side, and just maybe 6 or 7 people could gather around and watch him.
As long as you didn't get behind him.
Yeah. The distance from the stage was also very small. It was less than 5 feet from the front row seats to the stage, and the stage was only raised by about a foot.
And it was a tiny little
But,
stage.
but Arthur wasn't on the stage.
No, Arthur was
No,
on the
he
table.
had his own table.
Yeah, if you think about like a casino blackjack table, if you've ever been at a casino blackjack table, but about 2/3 or 3/4 size, and only, as David said, only 4 or 5 people could watch it at a time.
And Arthur would do the first show at 8:30, and he would do the last show after the stage magicians had gone. So he did 2 shows a night.
But I do remember a couple of nights when a guy named Tony Slidini did his act on the main stage. Tony was considered the great Slidini. Slidini was considered maybe the best close-up magician ever. And he did it in full view he did from the side, so you could see what he was doing. People in the audience could see, but the poor person who was sitting across the table from him had not a clue what was going on. And it was hilarious and it was startling.
Those are clearly directional mics. So point them at
So Karen has another question, but it's Rich and then Jerry. And if I'm missing any hands, put your hands up again so that I don't lose you.
I just had, I guess, more of a comment than anything. When Wendy Rose,
Welcome.
Wendy Rose and Terry Gary both did poetry readings together. Terry wrote a great fanzine article, I forget who published it, about going to, I think it was Kepu in San Francisco, and some, a skid row of San Francisco at that time, with Wendy Rose speaking into a building which seemed to be dilapidated and full of creepy people, and eventually got to the control room and were able to do their poetry reading. But
Carrie
you go.
Carrie and Wendy went to American Indian celebrations together, and people would ask, powwows, yes. People would ask Terry what her tribe was, and she would say, the Watchamakalans.
They met at a powwow. They were very, very close friends. Jerry.
Well, several things. earlier this evening at dinner, we were talking about the MagicCellar, and I was wondering whether hadn't seen anything on Facebook from Wendy for a long time. So I looked, I see she hasn't posted anything.
Let's
for a long
not
time.
do that from the stage, just it's really not.
No,
it's
I
not a
just wanted
pretty
to
story.
say, when I continued looking stuff up, I saw that she had won a number of poetry awards.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, as far as one of the time, I think I went to the cellar like maybe twice, and one of those times Arthur did a little close-up magic for me, and he had these three wooden things that he was hiding little balls under and making them appear and disappear, and then at the end of it, he flipped the things over, and there was no hollow. They were totally flat. Where did those balls go?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Speaking of writers, as we were, these two magazines have got stories by Bill Pranzini and Michael Curlin that are set in the MagicCellar. So they and it's got drawings in them. They're pretty amazing, and they will be, with her permission, for sale here. So if you would like them.
I am not the boss of you.
Well, I mean, these are the auction. Quite frankly, these are dupes. Because I've got more at home. I think Cedric. I think
Yeah, they're going in the auction.
they're going to go in the auction.
I'll
I
take
think.
care of them.
People are talking about Cedric being the person who wrote for fanzines. The first issue of Inside has a short story by Cedric in it.
Yeah.
And I brought it down. 1951.
Wow.
Who was the editor of Inside?
Ron Smith.
Ron Smith. Yes.
We can mention this first.
You can too.
Okay. Cedric was a big fan of mysteries, and he put together this anthology of mysteries that involve magic called Slide of Crime. And there are copies around. You can find them. I found one after a number of years.
Some of the authors.
You
I've
also
got
see
that
authors.
I've got it at home.
Ellery Queen, Stephen Leacock, Walter B. Gibson, Dorothy Sayers, Philip McDonald, Grant Allen, Mandy Wade Wellman, Conway Longstar.
Even Leacock.
Conway Lone Star is an acronym. Or not an acronym, a
Anagram.
anagram. Yeah.
For whom?
I forget offhand, but it says it. It's in the book. You go to the story and get to the end. She was not that well known, but she wrote a bunch of stories under anagram names.
And was Walter Gilbert the did he
Walter Gibson.
Yeah.
Gibson, the
Walter
youngest
Gibson
brother.
wrote The Shadow. Clayton Rawson wrote half a dozen mysteries about the Great Merlini. Several novels which were published as Dell Mapbacks, which are a great deal of fun.
Oh,
Does
I highly
Conway in there?
So,
Oh, okay.
and it doesn't say who Conway Lone Star is.
I think it's just if you let me look, I can find it.
So,
And speaking of writers, again, we were closing up the MagicCellar because they were going to tear down the building. And I went over to see if I could help. And, people were busy, and Ted Sturgeon turned up. And so I got to show Ted Sturgeon around the, at that point, fairly stripped MagicCellar location. So that was like sort of mind-boggling. I think Quinn had probably brought him in to show him the place, but that was great. The other thing about that particular place is back in the 30s, it was a meeting place for the German-American boom.
oh God, isn't it?
When did the MagicCellar close?
February of '78. It says in the earthquake lagoon stuff.
Yeah.
It moved when Magoons moved. It was no longer a cellar, and it was no longer the same at all.
It was nothing like the same.
The Conway Lone Star is an anagram for Clayton Rawson, and Norma Shear was the author who wrote a bunch of anagram mysteries using different things. There are many anagrams. It's all mentioned at the very end of the story right here.
Norma Shear was a family friend of mine growing up, but that's just another small world story. Hands. Karen, Jerry.
So I just wanted to mention that Sid had actually hoped to be here this weekend. Unfortunately, he's 90 years old
95.
and 95 and had some health issues, but he was really excited that this was happening. And then two, Terry talked about a magician named Paul somebody.
We have a photograph of Paul Swingari sawing a woman in half.
Yeah, that's in the scrapbook.
It is.
Yep.
And his girlfriend was his assistant and did all the real work, almost.
It's when I learned that if you see big magic tricks, you congratulate not the magician, but the person who's doing something contortionist inside a cabinet to make it look impressive.
Do you know who Dean Dickensheet is?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, Dean Dickensheet.
Was a major Mystery Writers of America person, a major collector of mysteries, was the godfather, I believe, of Ted Johnstone / David McDaniel, because McDaniel wrote him into the Man from U.N.C.L.E. novels as the head of Thrush. His wife Shirley was also in the books under a different name.
But no relation.
He was a Sherlockian too.
Yeah, major Sherlockian.
Another San Francisco fan, collector, author, indexer, writer of essays about the history of, in this particular case, mostly mysteries.
Yeah. Really nice guy.
Jerry.
Well, based on the new information about when it closed, I must have only been there once. Because I moved at the end to Seattle at the end of '77. I must have visited sometime sometime during '78.
So John, I asked at the beginning of the panel before you got here, how many people had been to the Magic Cellar and how many people were not sure. And Mike says he has pictures of you at the Magic Cellar.
I think so.
Really? Because I was just thinking, well, now I'm sure I never was there.
Let me see that picture. I'm having to dig the pictures out and see if it's actually you or somebody else.
I looked at them and I thought it might have been you.
Okay.
There were major connections between Seattle and
Oh yeah.
Bay Area fans.
Oh, boy.
Different
whole
That's a whole different thing. I drove that so many times, and other people in the band.
I also had another thing I wanted to say. Which,
Please.
The piece that's in the scrapbook by Terry about meeting the Karamazovs, we published it in Mainstream, and then we reprinted it in Little Brook, which is like 20 years later. And Cedric wrote us a letter of comment about it.
Nice. So Christy, David, Mike, you want to say that?
Yeah, I just want to say a quick announcement.
That's your dad.
We've disturbed the spirits.
Yeah. It's okay.
So
One piece of
we
tape-
mentioned the
one
photographs
piece of tape.
that John may or may not be in, but those photographs are online if anybody wants to look at them. And there are quite a lot of them. I've gotten like a run of about 30 pictures of the Flying Karamazov brothers doing their acts at various times. They're not very good because this was the 70s and everything was done on film. And the color film, it was dark. So you're going to see a lot of distorted dumbbells floating through the air. But if you want to go look at them, there is.
Use flash.
I didn't want to use flash when we were throwing things at each other. But there is. You can ask me about this later. I can write it down for you. It's magazineart.org/temp/richcode. /richcode 1. Sorry, richcode 2, richcode 3, and richcode 4. More is new. It's more stuff that I found in the last week.
Didn't you also photographs from Andy Schechter and Alva Rogers' wedding?
It's funny, I was just going to bring that up.
I have one. What happened was that Andy's father had come and he'd forgotten his camera. So I lent him mine. So I took one picture of the overall scene, then took the film out and handed him my camera and a roll of film. So wherever Andy's photographs wound up, You have them?
I got them from Andy Hooper, who got them at the memorial for Andy Schechter. And I found 3, which I scanned and sent to Rich. He included one in the scrapbook.
Oh, okay. I've never seen them.
I have a somewhat embarrassing story about that wedding. I was Andy Schechter's attendant, and I wore a bright lemon yellow long dress, which under the stage lights looked like nothing. Pure white wedding dress. And I was so I never thought about stage lights and colors. I was so embarrassed because Andy was wearing something not anywhere near as traditional wedding dresses as mine looked on the stage.
I do have pictures of some kind of Spanish gathering that may have been in Alva's apartment.
Okay.
Oh, that's
And
If I'm in the white dress, it's Andy and Elvis.
I actually think I sent you a link to the box.
Probably did.
Wasn't Martha the officiant for that?
Yes.
Yes, Martha Randall. I'm speaking more of.
Yes, she's in the
Writers.
photo
Yeah.
as well as Andy and Alva, the one that's in the scrapbook.
Yeah, that's in the scrapbook. That's from here.
Martha Randall and her husband, Richard Bergstresser of the time, are the people who tape recorded all of the program of 1968's Baycon and the 1970 Nebula Awards back for KPFA.
And Marta now lives in Arcata,
And
which
where are the
is
tapes?
you're halfway there if you came from the Bay Area.
The tapes from that I found were in the KPFA archive. I paid to get them digitized and donated copies of them to the FANAC website. So FANAC has the Baycon tapes. We don't know what's happened to the Nebula Award tapes because I just found out about that very recently, and they've completely changed their setup. So I don't know whether I can get them digitized or not, but I'll do what I can.
So how many pillars are in the 1968 Baycon?
All of them.
That was my first World Cup.
Another
My first science fiction
yet
convention.
another
Mine too.
panel.
So
Yes,
How are we doing for time?
We're getting close.
there was one other
54.
There was one other thing that happened is when at 2:00 when the bars closed, people would go off to Huey, Dewey, and Louie's for dim sum, or some of us would go to Clown Alley
For hamburgers, yes.
for hamburgers. So that was, and then later on in life, when I got a bit smarter, I ended up sleeping in my van in the streets of San Francisco because I wasn't going to drive home after those.
After a levitation or two.
Well, I didn't drink levitations. I drank
Irish coffee.
Irish coffees.
Y'all want a Matthew Tepper story from the Magic Cellar?
Sure.
One year one time there was a police strike in San Francisco, and we used to frequently go to the Clown Alley, the hamburger and hot dog stand that was about 2 blocks away. But Matthew wouldn't go with us that night because it wasn't safe on the streets of San Francisco if the police were on strike. I'm just saying.
I seem to remember that strike. A lot of people felt a lot safer.
At least the locals did.
Town Alley, I really missed that. I wouldn't go so much after the
Magic
the
Cellar.
Magic Cellar, but after Bubuhe Gardens, it was pretty good. That hippo burgers.
That's the next panel.
But yeah, I just wondered
Late
if you got
covers.
any stories about how Quinn Yarbro ended up doing the tarot readings there.
I told that story.
We talked about that.
I'm
They met at Cedric and Quinn met at a writers convention, mystery writers convention.
No, it was a conference at Stanford University.
Oh.
Stanford had a program on science.
My
Stanford had a program on science fiction in the early 70s, and Quinn was there, and Tom Scorsia was there, and Frank Robson was there, and some other people, other local writers, and Sid knew Scorsia, and Scorsia introduced him to Quinn and Quinn to him, and they got to talking about what each was doing. And Quinn, of course, does many things and was doing many things. She was teaching voice at the time, and among other things, she was writing the messages for Michael books, which involved an entirely separate universe of people with some overlap with fandom. And she was also doing readings. And so Quinn was apparently talking about this when Cedric said, well, I have this magic club. Would you like to? And so forth.
So a total trivia question that nobody would know is the box that she used to keep the tarot cards in was a Palak illustrated Russian black box that I bought and brought back for a present to her when I went to Russia in 1968. And it had, I kept the one with the Firebird. Hers had a picture of a speaking mountain, a mountain that was talking. It was folkloric and fantasy oriented. So that's
Cedric had a bit of his life after the MagicCellar. He moved back to Volcano, by the way, is outside the town where they lived. Sorry.
They lived outside.
They lived outside of Volcano.
Yes.
9 miles up the road, then 2 miles down a dirt road.
Yeah.
In a basically a log cabin that they built.
For non-locals, Volcano is.
Volcano is
you know,
in the middle of Gold Country.
You know the celebrated jumping frog in Calaveras County? That was set right near Volcano.
Yeah. And there, if you go wander around his property, you'll find old mine shafts and
In
things.
the town?
It's a
Yeah.
small town.
Yeah,
It's a very
small town.
It
It has
With the St. George Hotel.
and no stoplights.
Yeah.
It was not even a one stoplight town.
So he became county historian of Amador County. And later, and until very recently, he had a radio show called Tales of the Mother Lode.
Yep.
And he's got a really wonderful radio voice telling all these stories. Some of them creepy, some of them just kind of scary.
Okay. I thought I would close with a quick story that's not about the MagicCellar, but it's only true because I spent so much time at the MagicCellar. Many years later, Allen and I and some other people went to see Penn and Teller in Las Vegas. And they did a show where they taught you everything you needed to know so that when they did the bullet catch, it would be completely transparently obvious how they did it because they had laid out every piece of it. And I was watching this, I think it was David who said, or Tom, that sometimes you get to watching magic for the skill of it and you stop caring if it fools you because you come to see it as an art form. And I was watching it and I was in total love. And then we found out that all of Alan's super smart poker friends had seen it the night before and were like, oh my God, how did they do the bullet catch? That was amazing. I can't figure it out at all.
And another bit of fallout from going to the MagicCellar is we were down in LA for LosCon or an LA Con or something, and a bunch of us got an invitation to visit the Magic Castle, which is non-trivial.
I think it's easier now.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm hiring. See you.
Thanks, everybody. Let's take a 7-minute break while we attend to our technical